She was the youngest in the family, the only daughter, and the only one they never took seriously. They told her she didn't have the instinct, that she was just a dreamer. So she left quietly. And in the shadows, she built an empire. This is the true story of Eva Lancaster, a woman they pushed aside until the day she returned, not for revenge, but for something far more powerful. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, this story is for you. Take a deep breath and come listen. You know, when people hear the name Lancaster and Sons, they usually picture polished homes on magazine covers, big glass windows, marble countertops, the kind of spaces that feel like they were made for people who already have everything. But when I hear that name, I think of being 10 years old, standing in the corner of a job site, holding a clipboard that was too big for my hands. My name is Eva Lancaster. And yes, that Lancaster. But back then, that name didn't feel like a legacy. It felt like a label. A reminder that no matter how smart I was, no matter how hard I worked, there were rooms I'd never really belong in. I was the youngest, the only girl. My father used to bring my brothers to every site visit, every investor dinner, every design reveal. I'd be there too, of course, carrying coffee, running errands, watching from the edges of the room while they got to make the decisions. They were the future of the company. I was a helper. Funny thing is, I never complained. I thought if I stayed quiet, stayed useful, eventually they'd see me, not as a little girl tagging along, but as someone who could actually lead. I studied harder than anyone, got into a top business school, earned my MBA by 23. I knew our numbers better than the CFO. I memorized zoning codes for counties we hadn't even built in yet. Still, every time I spoke up, they smiled like I was playing pretend. There was this one moment I still remember it, clear as day, when I brought up succession planning in a meeting. You know, trying to get ahead of the curve, thinking long term. My father cut me off mid-sentence. He didn't even look up when he said it. "You're not one of us, Eva." The room went quiet. Not a single eye met mine. Not even my uncle, the same one who once told me privately that I was the smartest one in the room. Everyone just froze, like they agreed, but didn't want to say it out loud. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just sat there, swallowing the kind of silence that stays with you for years. It was at that moment, I think, something inside me shifted. Because when someone tells you you don't belong, you've got two choices. You can break, or you can build. I chose to build, and that was the day they stopped seeing me as part of the family. But what they didn't know is that it was also the day I stopped asking to be. Have you ever had one of those nights where the silence feels louder than anything you've ever heard? That was me, sitting alone in an office I technically ran, but didn't actually have the title for. The boardroom had cleared out hours ago, but their words still echoed like they were stitched into the walls. "You're not one of us. Pathetic girl. You were never the smart one." And the worst part? He didn't even flinch when he said it. My father just walked out like he'd given me a piece of advice instead of a wound I'd carry for years. I stared at the black screen of my laptop. No emails, no blinking cursor. Just my own reflection looking back at me, tired, angry, and strangely calm. Something clicked in that silence. Not in a loud way, not like fireworks, more like the way a door quietly shuts and locks from the inside. I didn't cry that night. I thought I would. I think I wanted to, but there was nothing left to give them. No more explanations. No more trying to prove I belonged at a table where they'd already decided my seat didn't exist. So I made a different choice. I packed a suitcase. I booked a one-way flight. I left before the sun came up. No note. No announcement. Just gone. And for the first time in my life, I felt light. Not happy. Not yet. But lighter. Like I'd finally stopped dragging around their expectations. I moved into a tiny walk-up apartment above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread every morning. The floors creaked. The pipes hissed every time I turned on the shower. I didn't have a car. Didn't know anyone in the city. I had exactly 2 things to my name: a laptop and a plan. I sat at the kitchen table, a wobbly thing I got secondhand from a neighbor, opened a blank document, and started typing. Not for them, not to impress anyone, but for me. It didn't have a logo yet. No investors, no office space, just a name that meant something only to me. Era Designs. Named after a faint little star that no one sees, unless they're really looking. That's what I wanted to be. Quiet, unseen, but impossible to ignore once you finally saw it. The truth is, there's something kind of beautiful about being underestimated. No one expects you to win. No one watches when you move. You get to build without noise, without pressure. I didn't have their money. I didn't have a boardroom or a last name that opened doors, but I had something they'd never understand. I had clarity. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't trying to beat them. I just wanted to build something that was mine. And if I did it right, one day, they'd realize the daughter they dismissed was never the weak one. She was just the one who stopped asking. The early days, they were rough. Have you ever tried building something when all you've got is faith and a secondhand laptop? I was working from that tiny apartment with the crooked windows and the heater that coughed louder than the neighbor's dog. There was no office, no team, no polished website. Just me, figuring it out one email, one call, one sleepless night at a time. Most days, it felt like shouting into a void. I pitched my ideas to small contractors, boutique developers. Even a few homeowners are doing high-end custom builds. Most of them didn't even respond. The ones who did, they said no. Too small, too young, too new. They didn't say it out loud, but I could hear it in their tone. They didn't see a founder. They saw a girl playing business in a city that eats you alive. But here's the thing they didn't count on. I wasn't looking for anything easy. I was looking for openings. And eventually, they came. One client said yes, then another. Tiny projects, kitchen redesigns, energy-efficient add-ons, smart lighting setups. Nothing big. But every time someone gave me a shot, I treated it like they handed me a $10 million contract. I managed it all myself: design, sourcing, project coordination, accounting. I was the CEO, the intern, and the janitor, all rolled into one. I barely slept. I lived on instant noodles and coffee. But I was building, and I was learning what most people never do, that doing something quietly doesn't mean doing it small. A few months in, something strange started happening. People started calling me back. Then they started recommending me. Word of mouth. Whisper networks. One smart woman told another. Then a young couple. Then a boutique developer. Suddenly, I wasn't the girl no one knew. I was the woman who delivered. By the end of that first year, I had 5 full-time employees, a real studio space, and a wait list. Era Designs wasn't just surviving, it was gaining speed. But here's the part that still makes me smile. Lancaster Sons? They had no idea. They thought I had vanished, left the industry. Maybe I settled down. Maybe I failed. But what they didn't realize was that I hadn't disappeared. I had just gone quiet. There's something powerful about building in the shadows, about moving while no one's watching. Because when they don't see you coming, they can't stop you. And I wasn't building just to prove a point. I was building something better. They still didn't know it was me. That was the beautiful part. Lancaster Sons, the empire that once looked untouchable, was starting to lose ground. Slowly, quietly. Like a little shift beneath the surface no one noticed, until it cracked something open. And that crack? That was me. I kept Era under the radar on purpose. No interviews, no photos, no loud launches or press releases. Just work. Clean, fast, different, and way more personal than what my family ever offered. We didn't try to look big. We tried to look real. And clients felt that. They came to us for something my father's company never understood: homes that felt human, designs that made room for people's lives, not just their money. We specialized in things Lancaster and Sons had always rolled their eyes at: smart tech, eco-materials, minimalist style, bold lines with soft edges. We weren't just changing how spaces looked. We were changing how they felt. And while they were still selling tradition, we were offering vision. Then came the first big contract, a mid-sized developer in the city. They were considering Lancaster until they saw our proposal. Sleeker, sharper, more in tune with the kind of buyer who wanted a home that told a story. We got it, then another, and another. I watched as Lancaster's bids started failing. Not dramatically, not with headlines, just missed deals, lost leads, small things, but consistent. The kind of losses that sting more because you can't explain them. They blamed the market. They blamed the economy. They never once thought to blame the no-name firm quietly eating their lunch. We poached talent they overlooked, hired designers they passed on, brought in project managers who'd spent years being ignored at their company, and gave them space to shine. We didn't just build a team, we built a belief. And all the while, I stayed invisible. I didn't need them to see me. Not yet. Because watching them flail against a ghost, that was a justice I couldn't have planned better if I tried. But the moment I knew things had really shifted, it happened at an industry expo. I wasn't there to speak, wasn't even invited. I went as an observer, walked through the booths, smiled at the newer players, just watched. And then I saw them. My brothers, Clark and Ryan, standing at a downsized Lancaster booth, trying to hand out brochures with forced smiles. That's when it happened. A developer I'd pitched to just weeks before walked by, glanced at their table, and said casual as can be, "Oh, sorry, I'm already in talks with Era." Clark's face dropped. "Era?" he asked. The man nodded, already walking away. "Yeah, they've got something special going on." And just like that, I saw it. The crack in their pride. Beginning of the unraveling. They didn't know who we were yet, but they were starting to feel us. And that was just the beginning. It started like any other Monday. Gray sky, coffee barely warm, papers spread across my desk. I was reviewing design specs for a new green luxury project. Just another normal workday, until my assistant rushed in. She didn't knock, just stood there pale, breathless, holding her phone like it was something on fire. "Eva," she whispered, "you're trending." I frowned. "What?" She turned the screen toward me, and in one instant, one headline, the world shifted. The ghost behind Era Designs, founder revealed to be Eva Lancaster. I stared at it. My name. My full name. Right there, bold, unavoidable, on every screen. CNN, Forbes, Business Insider. Social feeds lighting up with shares, comments, disbelief. Photos from old conferences. Side-by-side comparisons. Lancaster and Sons' fall. And our rise. Suddenly, the whole world knew, and I wasn't ready for what that felt like. You'd think I'd smile. You'd think I'd feel proud or vindicated, but I just sat there, frozen. There was a part of me, a younger part, the one who used to cry in silence after board meetings, who used to rehearse pitches in the mirror just hoping to be taken seriously. She came back. She was sitting next to me now, quiet, wide-eyed, trembling. For a long time, I had built everything around staying invisible. I'd poured my energy into the work, not the attention. I didn't want applause, I wanted proof. But this was louder than anything I had imagined. My inbox exploded. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Some messages were from people I hadn't heard from in years. Some were from strangers calling me brave. Some just said, "Thank you. You speak for women like me." And then came the message that stopped my heart cold. From my mother. "Your father saw the news. He hasn't spoken in an hour." I stared at that message for a long time. Not out of satisfaction. Not even anger. Just stillness. Because for years, I thought if he finally saw me, really saw me, it would fix something inside me. That the little girl he dismissed would finally feel whole. But reading that message, feeling the world roar around me, I realized something I hadn't expected. I didn't need him to speak anymore, because I wasn't building to be accepted. I was building to be free. That afternoon, my publicist called. She sounded breathless, too, like she'd been holding her lungs in all day. "There's a national show asking for you," she said. "Prime time, big audience. Are you ready?" I looked out the window. Rain sliding down the glass like quiet tears. "I think so," I said. I didn't pick a bold outfit. No statement jewelry. Just a navy suit, simple, clean. The kind of look that doesn't shout but speaks something extraordinary and in silence. "Is it true you're the daughter of Charles Lancaster?" I met her eyes, and with a calm I didn't expect, I said, "Yes. Why didn't you lead with that name?" I let the silence stretch, then said, gently, "Because for years I thought that name would open doors, but when it didn't, I built my own." She looked at me, surprised. "And now you've built a company that outperformed theirs?" I shook my head slowly, not in denial, in clarity. It's not about outperforming. It's about building something that reflects who I am. Something that welcomes people like me. People who were told they weren't enough. There was a pause, then a soft wave of clapping, and then something I didn't expect. The entire audience stood. It wasn't wild or loud. It was quiet, honoring something unspoken. And in that stillness, I felt it. The shift. I wasn't someone's daughter anymore. I wasn't the one they left out. I was the woman who walked out of their shadow and never looked back. The invitation arrived like it always had. Cream-colored envelope, embossed lettering, Lancaster Family Annual Reunion. No personal note, no apology, just tradition. 4 years ago, that invite would have sent me into a spiral. Back then, I would have stared at it for days, wondering if this time they'd see me, hear me, finally treat me like I belonged. But this time, I didn't feel a single knot in my stomach, just stillness, a quiet knowing. I let it sit on the counter for a few days. I wasn't sure if I'd go, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't need to anymore. I had nothing to prove, nothing left to say, and yet, somewhere deep down, I knew I had to walk back in. Not for them, for me. So that Saturday, I pulled up to the estate in a car that didn't scream. It whispered. A black Rolls-Royce Ghost. Fitting, really, for the girl they once erased. The one they thought was gone. As I stepped out, I noticed something heads turning before I even reached the door. Not out of curiosity, not confusion, recognition. Inside, it was like time had slowed. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. My mother was the first to greet me. Her eyes softened, just for a second, like something in her had thawed. She reached for my hand. "You look incredible," she whispered. "Thank you," I said. Then, just loud enough for her to hear, "Let's not pretend anything." She gave a small, sad smile. Fair enough. The house was buzzing. Laughter, toasts, the smell of expensive wine and polished wood floors. Uncles, cousins, people I hadn't seen since I left, now pretending we had no history. I walked through them like air, and then, near the back patio, I saw him, my father, Charles Lancaster, standing alone facing the lawn, his back straight but somehow smaller than I remembered. He turned when he heard me approach. His eyes landed on me older, sharper, maybe a little tired. "You came," he said. I did. He nodded once, like he wasn't sure where to begin, or maybe like he knew any place he started would be too late. "You've made quite a name for yourself." I didn't answer. He looked away, voice lower now. "The company's struggling. Your brothers." He stopped, searching for words. "We could use your help." I let the silence stretch. Not as punishment, but it's true. "I remember what you said," I said softly. "That I wasn't the smart one, just a girl with ideas, that I didn't have the instinct." He closed his eyes for a beat, maybe in regret, maybe just to breathe. "You were wrong," I added. He looked at me again. Really looked. And I could see it, the flicker of recognition, of the woman he never thought I'd become. "You want my help," I said, "but I'm not here to rescue you." I stepped a little closer, just enough that he couldn't look away. "While you were mocking me, I was building. While you were dismissing me, I was becoming." His lips parted, maybe to defend himself, maybe to apologize. I didn't give him the chance. "And you were right about one thing," I said. "I'm not like you." Then I turned toward the door, and thank God for that. As I walked back through the house, people stepped aside, not in fear, not in awe, in respect. For the first time in my life, they saw me. Not the little girl begging to be included, not the black sheep, just Eva, the woman who walked back into the house that once broke her and didn't shatter. Outside, the sky had turned gold, that soft kind of evening light that feels like it's wrapping you up in something warm. I slid into the driver's seat of the Rolls. Quiet engine. My fingers are lightly resting on the wheel. And before I shifted into drive, I glanced up at the house in the rearview mirror. But I wasn't looking at the people inside. I was looking at her, the girl I used to be. The one who stood in boardrooms with trembling hands and burning hope. The one who stayed up late practicing pitches no one would listen to. The one who walked out, heartbroken, and came back whole. I smiled, not because I'd won, but because I no longer needed to. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore. I was leading my own life, owning my story, creating a legacy built on vision, not inheritance. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one. Because somewhere out there, maybe you're watching this right now, and part of you is wondering if your moment has passed, if you'll ever be seen, if all the work, all the silence, all the struggle, if it ever mattered. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me sooner. You are not invisible. You are becoming. And one day, maybe quietly, maybe suddenly, the world will realize what you always knew, that you were never the problem. They just didn't see your power. But you always had it, right there, inside you. So, if you've ever felt like Eva, if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever had to build yourself up from the ashes of someone else's doubt, tell me, because maybe it's time the world hears your story too.